And good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to this morning's meeting of Licensing Subcommittee, Thursday, the 29th of September 2022. My first task is the election of chairman. I am deemed to be the presiding person at today's meeting as I'm the chair of the Licensing Committee. So that said, may I have nominations for chair, please?
Can I nominate you for chair?
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams, and may I have a seconder?
Happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So elected, I will ask our clerk, please, Mrs. Hollyoake, if she'd kindly take us through housekeeping. Thank you, Mrs. Hollyoake.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that the public part of this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. If joining remotely, please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Bradley Road under the flyover. Finally, if joining remotely, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum, and can everyone ensure that mobile phones and other devices, including laptops, are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hollyoake. So item 2 then, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Burton, and we're extremely grateful to Councillor Williams for standing in today. Thank you, Councillor Williams, and also to Councillor Kelsey, our almost permanent stand-in reserve. You're very welcome, Councillor Kelsey, and very welcome to stay to observe the meeting if you so wish. On to item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Williams, any declarations of interest?
None at all, thank you.
And Councillor Anderson?
None at all, thank you.
Thank you. And for completeness, no declarations of interest from myself. Item 4 is protocol for public speaking. I'd like you to note that protocol for public meeting has been circulated on the agenda sheet in full. So on to the substantive then, which is item 5, application for a review of premises licence at Bargain Convenience Store 495 Wimborne Road, Bournemouth, BH9 2AW. We're here to consider an application by Dorset Police for review of the premises licence following an intelligence-led operation with officers from HMRC and Trading Standards. And this matter is brought before the subcommittee today for determination. So I will now introduce everybody who is going to take part in the meeting. My name is Councillor Jude Smutt, and I am chair of the Licensing Committee and chair of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Williams.
I'm Lawrence Williams and I represent Littledown and Iford Ward.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Anderson.
Good morning, my name is Councillor Sarah Anderson and I represent Moordown Ward.
Thank you. Mrs. Jardine.
Good morning, Tanya Jardine, Licensing Officer and dealing with this application.
Thank you. And Mrs. Cole.
Good morning, it's Linda Cole, I'm the licensing officer. Sorry, I apologise. It's Linda Cole. I'll be advising the licensing subcommittee this morning.
Thank you. You're a legal advisor. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cole. And Mrs. Hollyoake, who we've already heard from.
Jill Hollyoake, clerk to the subcommittee.
And I believe, although I can't see him, we have Councillor Kieran Wilson, who's attending remotely. He's listening today for training purposes. If you're with us, oh, there you are, Councillor Wilson. A very good morning to you and a very warm welcome. You're observing today for training purposes as a newer member to our squad. Thank you very much for your attention. So now for the applicant, Mrs. Busfield.
Good morning, Louise Busfield, Dorset Police.
Thank you. And for the premises owner, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, good morning. David Ramsey, licensing consultant representing Bargain Convenience Store.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Zamanko. Would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Zamanko. Mrs. Marco, you're on mute. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name's Ali Rashid Zunako.
And that's lovely. Thank you very much. If you'd like to mute yourself again. So before I run through the procedure, I'll just check the following, that everybody who's given notices to speak has been identified, and that anyone who wishes to withdraw any representation or doesn't wish to now speak to, please indicate. So I see nobody on the screen, I see nobody in the room. So I'll take that we're all content. So I'll take us now through the procedure and order of speaking for our hearing. And it is as follows. Our licensing officer will present the report, that's Tanya Jardim. And then the applicant will make her application, that's Mrs. Busfield. Questions of the applicant by all party and members of the subcommittee will go first. Then our responsible authorities, that's Mrs. Busfield, will make their representations. There'll be questions of the responsible authorities with the members of the subcommittee going first. And then everybody will be given an opportunity to sum up, and the hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today, September the 29th, so 5 working days from today. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll now ask everybody to confirm agreement that they're all happy with that proposed procedure, or if not, to make representations, please. So Mrs. Busfield, are you content?
Indeed, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramsey, are you content?
Yes, I'm content, thank you.
And Mr. Samako, are you content?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Jardim, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
And Mrs. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll just remind finally, please, and seriously, that all parties not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions, please, to be asked through the chairman. I will indicate as to who will answer, and there'll be no cross-examination of parties, please. So that said, if everybody's content, I'll ask our licensing officer to present a report. Thank you, Mrs. Jardim. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So just before I introduce my report, I just wanted to clarify an error that I made on the report. It says that the licence was granted on the 16th of January 2017, but it was in fact 2007.
Yes.
I'm really sorry
I think
about that.
it was such an obvious error that it wasn't an error. Yeah,
okay.
we all noted that. Thank you, Mrs. Jardim. Would you like to continue?
Thanks. That's fine. So application was made by Dorset Police for a review of the premises licence at Bargain Convenience Store, 495 Wimborne Road. This is under section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003 on the grounds that they believe the premises are not upholding the Prevention of Crime and Disorder licensing objective. The review application was lodged following an intelligence-led visit to the premises by police and officers from HMRC and Trading Standards, where concerns were raised that the premises were involved in the sale and storage of illicit alcohol and tobacco. During the consultation period, a representation in support of the review was received by a nearby business who claimed that it is common knowledge that the Bargain Convenience Store sell illegal or fake cigarettes, tobacco and alcohol. Our records indicate that in 2018, the licensing office received a report from a member of the public that the premises were selling alcohol to underage persons and also alcohol and cigarettes under the counter. The licensing office referred this information to Trading Standards and sent out a warning letter to Mr. Manco. Mr. Ramsey, acting on behalf of Mrs. Manco, carried out a review of the premises operation and produced a survey and recommendations which have been circulated as part of the report for consideration by members in making their decision. Members are reminded that any powers exercised by them must be necessary and appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and directed at the causes of the concern which the application identifies once these have been established through this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim. So members, are there any questions for Mrs. Jardim on points of fact? Councillor Williams, Councillor Anderson, No, very comprehensive. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim. Mrs. Busfield, are there any questions for Mrs. Jardim on points of fact?
No, there aren't. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramsey, any questions for Mrs. Jardim on points of fact?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim, for a very comprehensive report. So now your opportunity as applicant, Mr. Ramsey, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Ramsey, you're absolutely wrong. It's not you. I've jumped a paragraph. You're not the applicant. The applicant is indeed Mrs. Busfield. Mrs. Busfield, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So Louise Busfield, Licensing Officer, Dorset Police, and it's always been the intention of my team. We're a small team, the Dorset Police Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team, to engage, work with and support licensees throughout Dorset to promote the 4 licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance primarily, also including the promotion of public safety and the protection of children from harm. It is our expectation that all licensees will endeavour to meet these objectives and fulfil their duty as licensees, with the responsibilities to uphold all of these objectives and also at the time to meet the conditions of their premises licences. Those present today will be aware that Dorset Police endeavours to avoid bringing concerns before the subcommittee where possible by working and engaging with the premises. And I don't need to elaborate further as to the full detail of why we find ourselves here today, because the details of the visit and the detail of the illicit tobacco seized is documented comprehensively in our application to review the premises licence. I just wish to stress our concern that, despite the warning received by Mr. Zamaco in 2018, he's continued to engage in exactly the same criminal activity by storing and selling illicit tobacco from his premises. As I say, please, it's all detailed in the application for review, so there's no need for me to reiterate anything, unless, of course, some matters arise which you'd like to ask me about after the other submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go on now to questions for the applicant. Any questions, members?
No, thank you.
Councillor Anderson, I have a couple of questions. In the text, I can't find the exact text, but it says the result in occasional engagement between the operator and Dorset Police following receipt of reports of alcohol-related antisocial behaviour associated with his premises. So do we have evidence of this from you, please?
I haven't got any statistical evidence for this meeting.
Okay, that's fine. My second question is, Mr. Zamaco revealed that they had purchased the goods for several individuals from Eastern Europe. Are you aware as to how many times this may have occurred? Were you advised?
We have been advised on the basis of multiple sources of intelligence from the local community.
Okay, and that on a multiple occasions, or?
Yes.
Okay, so it's general knowledge within the community, and this is a two-way stream of intelligence. And the other thing is, Dorset Police are concerned that this experienced operator of some 15 years has supported the organised crime of important illicit alcohol and tobacco. Is there evidence with regard to the organised crime element of that statement?
The organised crime element can be explained in so much as Mr. Zamaco is aware of the criminal aspect of his activities by purchasing and then selling under the counter illicit tobacco.
And have you had need in the past, in the generality, to advise or speak to Mr. Zamaco? Have there been other instances where the police have attended?
I can't comment on other attendances of police. From a licensing perspective, Mr. Zamaco received the warning letter after multi-agency intelligence, as a result of multi-agency intelligence back in 2018 for the purchase and sale of under-the-counter tobacco and at that time alcohol, I understand, to underage children.
Yes, indeed. And with regard to that, why that's a fairly serious matter, but Mr. Marco was admonished and was not, no, the matter wasn't taken further. Why? What was the decision? What was the background behind the decision not for the police and trading standards not to take that further?
I can't comment on the actions of trading, and this was an operation at that time led by them.
I understand. Thank you very much, Mrs. Busfield. That's extremely helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ramsey, do you have any questions for Mrs. Busfield?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, just a couple of questions. You said when you were in your talk that he continued to make these sales, and you referred to the 2018 incident. Was this corroborated at all, or was this just intelligence that you received?
I think I asked that question, but if you'd like to repeat the answer, thank you, Mrs. Busfield.
Our operation was as a result of community intelligence from multiple sources over a consistent period of time. And yes, indeed, this activity was evidenced on our visit of the 12th of July, when we witnessed the storage of illicit tobacco.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm not actually talking. You said that he had continued to sell. Am I right in saying that there was no evidence from 2018 that he actually was selling?
We have got no evidence. As I say, it is community intelligence which led to this operation, which provided the evidence which brings us here today.
Yes, so basically, I'm right in saying that he didn't continue to sell. You've no evidence of him continuing to sell, only the sale in July.
I can't comment any further on that, Mr. Ramsey.
No, I think we have two incidences, and they are 2018 and the recent incident. So I think we take those at face value. And one was dealt with by BCP Council, who wrote their letter, which we all had sight of, and the other has been before us today because of serious concerns by the police and trading standards. So thank you, Mrs. Busfield. I will leave it at that. And thank you for your questions, Mr. Ramsey. Unless you have any further questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Jardim, do you have any questions for Mrs. Busfield?
I don't have any questions.
You
Thank
don't.
you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you very much. Just to check with members, anything from that? No. Okay, so then for the premises, Mr. Ramsey, you now have the floor. If you'd like to take us through your submission. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And my apologies if I start coughing. I've got a slight chest infection.
Please take your time. Okay, don't rush on our account.
Yeah, it doesn't help with the accent either. Yes, just a bit of background on the store. The store is a small retail outlet situated in the busy Wimborne Road in Winton. It's surrounded by other retail premises and residential premises, especially in the upper floors. The surrounding streets have many residential properties that are served by the bargain convenience store and other nearby food outlets. The shop's owned by my client, Mr. Znamako, who lives nearby with his wife, who also works in the store, and his 3 young children. In addition to my client and his wife, there are 2 other members of staff who work at the store. Mr. Znamako has run the store for the past 5 years, with relatively few incidents for a premises which is in such a vibrant area. With reference to the 2018 letter, which we've already discussed, at the start of, and was mentioned by Ms. Jardine at the beginning of the hearing, my client totally denies these allegations, and I would have expected the accusations to have these accusations to be acted on by trading standards and HM Customs had there been credible evidence, not just a letter. There's also no record of any underage sales happening at the premises, and I'm sure there would have been test purchases over these years. The shop is the only source of income for the family, so to lose this store would really put them in serious problems. The events of the 12th of July have, as you can imagine, had an incredible source of stress for Mr. Znamako and his wife. The thought of losing their livelihood has been extremely worrying, especially during these difficult days. My client is under no illusion as to the seriousness of the offence he committed, and also aware that there's no excuse for the actions. Mr Snamako informed me that he was owed several thousands of pounds by these Eastern European gentlemen and had been waiting for money since before COVID. Having almost given up hope of receiving any payment, my client accepted the offer of the cigarettes and tobacco as part payment, something he now, in hindsight, understands was a serious error of judgment, to say the least. On receipt of the notice informing him of the review, my client requested my assistance. Although, as already stated, there's no excuse for the offence committed, it's often my experience that incidents such as this also highlight a lack of understanding of the licensing law, which in turn usually leads to a poorly run operation. On discussing this with my client, he was keen for me to assess the operation of his shop in the effort to identify where he is going wrong and, if he is allowed to continue, ensure that the premises is run in a way that meets the licensing objectives. Members of the committee, you should have a copy of my survey, which outlines my qualifications, experience, findings and recommendations. I won't take up your time by going through the 13 pages in detail, but will make the following observations. The vast majority of shortcomings found were in relation to documentation. There's also a lack of staff training, both in qualifications and in in-house training. On examining the current premises licence, it's clear that the attached conditions are noticeably sparse and in no way are adequate for such a premises in today's environment. Most shortcomings that I have identified would be rectified by the conditions that I would offer when submitting such a premises licence application. Outlined in my report are these replacement proposed conditions, which I would recommend to be adopted by Bargain Convenience Store immediately, and they have been. It's my belief that adopting these conditions would greatly improve the operation in a manner that would allow the premises and the premises licence holder to operate in a responsible manner. Most of my recommendations have now been implemented already by my client, and the remainder are being dealt with in the near future. Members of the committee, you would be within your rights to revoke this licence for such a serious offence. However, this would result in the loss of income for his family and the loss of employment for the other members of staff. There is also no doubt that the business would be purchased by another retailer who would also require a premises licence for the supply of alcohol to make the store profitable. You'll see in Dorset Police's application, in the second last paragraph, they say that the premises would still be viable without alcohol. This is not the case. Just 2 shops up is a large Sainsbury's store, and my client could not compete with that without the sale of alcohol. There would be no guarantee that any new retailer would run his or her premises in a way that fully meets the licensing objectives. Having worked closely with my client and his staff, I have no doubt that the improvements made will ensure that the premises is run to a required standard. As already stated, the serious mistakes made by my client have been a major wake-up call for him, highlighting to him the possible consequences of such errors in judgment and poor management. My client totally denies the accusations made in the representation of the 31st of August. I'm sure, like me, both Dorset Police and the Licensing Authority are aware of the regular accusations from rival premises, most of them unfounded and vindictive. In fact, I recently received such an accusation which I reported to the police and was found to be unfounded. Members of the committee, should you be in mind to allow him to keep his licence, my client will endeavour to maintain a high standard of operation in relation to the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As this question of the July 2nd matter 218 has been raised, I'd like to go back and ask our officer some questions on points of fact with regard to situations such as this. If I may, Mrs. Jardine, please, for advice to the subcommittee. We've had a denial on behalf of Mr. Zamako from Mr. Ramsey, and obviously we will need to ascertain the background behind this, if we may. When somebody is found to have been brought to the attention that you're selling alcohol and cigarettes to underage persons. How does that come about? Mr. Ramsey touched on obviously the well-known test purchasing, which is done on a regular basis. So how would that have been ascertained? Would that have been ascertained by actually a test purchase? Because otherwise I'm at a loss as to how that would be known. Could you advise the committee, please?
Okay, so on this situation, it was a member of the public that contacted us and let us know. On the first instance, we wrote to Mr. Manco just to let him know that that's come to our attention, and it's more just a warning saying, if that is the case, please stop, because now you've lost your due diligence on this one. What tends to happen is, trading standards are the bodies responsible for doing the test purchases. So we sent it to them, so they take over from that end. Licensing officers do not get involved in the test purchasing side of things. If it then came about that they failed the test purchase, then it comes back to us and also police, and we take the necessary action. But that warning was very much to make him aware if that is happening, then there might be consequences if we get another complaint.
I understand. So your information was intelligence from the general public, as the information was also put on note for Mrs. Busfield, because that was also public intelligence. And then that outcome obviously did have a more serious outcome as we have the matter before us today. Okay, thank you. That's really useful background. So thank you, Mr. Ramsey, for your submission. Members, are there any questions in the first instance for Mr. Ramsey?
Not from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
No, thank you.
Okay. I have quite a few, Mr. Ramsey, and I'm sure as I go along, my colleagues will dip in. You say in the first instance in your report that we'll look to, I think we're looking to, your point in case is that good management means good behaviour in a premise. So if we can get some good management in there, then obviously the behaviours will improve, which seems to be the timbre of your report. So you say, on examining the shop floor, the vast majority of alcoholic beverage were responsibly displayed. So which ones weren't, in your estimation, responsibly displayed?
Yes, they were all responsibly. Do you know what page that is on?
You say, on examining the shop floor, the vast majority of alcoholic beverages were responsibly displayed, which would leave there to be some which weren't. And I was just wondering whether you could advise the subcommittee which, in your estimation, with regard to your inspection, were not displayed responsibly.
Yes, I always recommend to my clients that there is no alcohol at all on the floor and only on the shelves that are there. Any other alcohol should be moved out of the shop, and I believe.
I understand. So some was on the floor.
Yeah, there was a small quantity. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. And then the licence states that there's a refusals register in existence. Just one moment. Thank you very much. So my question is, the licensing states there's a refusals register in existence, but Mr. Zamarco tells us it's been misplaced and he was unable to produce it. Can you give us a comment as to what you felt about that?
Yes, it's a fundamental thing that there should be a refusals book. It's one of the most important things.
It's a breach then?
Sorry?
Your advice would be that it is a breach?
Yes, it was, yes, and it's something that is now being rectified and the book is there. Okay.
And another one is that there was no incident book in existence. And again, your comment, please, with regard to that, as to whether that is a breach in your estimation or not.
Yes, I believe, I haven't got the current licence in front of me at the moment, but I believe that this is one of the problems, was that there was many things that are now just taken for granted when on conditions that weren't on his licence. There was one for the refusals book, but I believe there wasn't a condition regarding an incident book. But that is, again, it's something that he now has.
Okay, I'll ask Mrs. Jardim if you could check that for us with regard to the incident book. I'd be grateful. I'll come back to you. And you also mentioned there were no notices asking the customers to leave quietly. Again, a condition or a lack of condition or a breach in your estimation?
Yes, again, I believe that was not a condition on this licence, but it is something that is now there. I have now issued them with these notices.
Okay, and Mrs. Jardim, if you could advise us on that as well, please. Thank you. We also go on to there's no age verification policy in existence. But again, is that lack of condition or breach?
Yes, again, I believe it's not a condition, but it's something he now has.
Okay, I'll ask Mrs. Jardim if she would kindly check those. I'll demur to my colleague for some questions and then back to myself. Councillor Williams, thank you.
It's quite an easy question. Are there CCTV on the premises or inside the premises?
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, yes, there is.
Perhaps you could explain the CCTV way in which it's set up. That would be helpful, I think, for the subcommittee members. Thank you.
Yes, that again is all in my report. There are several cameras within the premises covering all the angles and also people coming through the door. There is another camera outside the premises which covers the outside of the premises. It's a modern system, multiplex system, which is the monitor is in the storeroom, and all the other equipment is in the storeroom, but it's all in good working order.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that advice. So back to myself then, unless Councillor Anderson.
Can I?
Yes, of course, Mr. Williams. Councillor Williams.
How long are the tapes kept for?
Yes, they're kept for 30-31.
Thank you for confirming that, Councillor Williams. It's standard time. Thank you for confirming that standard time. That's most useful. But going back to the letter, Mr. Ramsey, I really think we do want to discover a little bit more about this. When Mr. Zammarco received the letter, you have said that he did receive the letter, or can we confirm that he did receive the letter indeed? What did he do? Did he contact the licensing department from BCP? Or did he just leave it? What was the next steps? I'll also come to Mrs. Jardim to have her point on that. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, I only got this, the licensing authority in the last couple of years, so I haven't discussed it. I've discussed it with him, but not whether he actually received the letter. And he should be able to answer that question for you.
Okay, then I'll demur to Mr. Zammarco. When you received the letter, the warning letter, you categorically deny it. Which is, we accept your categorical denial as the matter. But did you, in fact, obviously you would have been quite upset by this, did you contact licensing? What were your next steps with regard to this letter? You're on mute, Mr. Zammarco. If you just press the button, lovely.
Yeah,
in your own time.
Yeah, actually, which letter are you talking
Hear you.
Do you hear me now?
If you turn your volume up a bit.
Okay, sorry.
Or just speak into the mic.
Hello? What? Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Sorry, what letter are you talking about?
Well, the one which Mr. Ramsey says that you deny that this happened. You deny there was underage sales to children or under-the-counter sales.
Never
so you were aware of it. So you said that, as far as we understand, you were aware of it. We just wanted to know, you weren't very happy that this letter had been sent to you. What were your next steps? What did you do about this letter? Did you contact anybody? Did you speak to anybody? Did you contact BCP licensing? Oh, would have been BCP. Is it would gone?
No, actually, no.
You didn't. So it was Bournemouth licensing. I beg your pardon. We hadn't combined by then.
I didn't get any letter since when I'm there.
We can't hear you, unfortunately, Mr. Zammarco.
Do you hear me now?
Not really, no. That is probably going to be better. Speak now.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you just about.
Yeah. It says, sorry, I didn't get
Can you
any
speak right into your machine, because you are really, really faint and we do need to hear from you.
Do you hear me now?
Just about.
It says, I didn't get any letter.
So you're saying you didn't get a letter?
No.
Okay. Well, we will have to take that as read. Thank you for that. So going on then, thank you, Mr. Samaka. You can put your microphone off. So if we go on to the next item, which is training, Mr. Ramsey. Sorry, back to you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you. You observed there was no documents of in-house training, but again, we'll ask if that was conditional breach. And you say you also noted that, bearing in mind the possibility of intimidation from difficult customers in this built-up residential area, there has been no training of staff in dealing with conflict or confrontation. So that was something you were advising you that would be useful in this instance, I think, Mr. Ramsey. Can we confirm that's the case there?
Yes, that's the case. When I do these surveys, as well as looking at documentation, I also question the staff that are there. Although there was no documented training, they could answer the questions that I asked on the Licensing Act. Things like what ID you can accept, what you would do if a drunk person came in, questions like that, and they were all answered adequately. But there was no documented training. Mr. Snamako has got a personal licence, but my recommendation was that more training was put in place, and that is happening. His wife has now sat the APLH level 2 and passed the exam. She will, if the licence is allowed to continue, she will become the DPS. But the hold up with that is that her visa, which she applied for renewal in November, has still not come. But another member of staff has been trained at the end of this week as well. So that out of the 4 members of staff, 3 will hold the APLH level 2. The other member of staff, all the staff have been given in-house training as well, that can be documented.
Okay, so how many will hold this? You say, could you remind us how many will hold this? 3, you said?
Yes, there's 4 members of staff, and by the end of October, there should be 3 members of staff who will hold the APLH.
Right. Thank you very much. Going to CCTV, no register in existence. Could we also look to see if that is a conditional breach? That'd be useful, thank you. What was it in your estimation, Mr. Ramsey?
Yeah, the CCTV is a modern system which is working perfectly well. It covers all angles of the shop and also covers the outside of the shop. There is now a CCTV register in place. Okay,
thank you. So you say, although the problem has led to the proposed licence review was a tax evasion offence, the evidence of shortcomings, you term them as shortcomings, observed during my survey may have led into a lapse in management within the operation. I can't see the connection, but I'd ask you please to explain what you mean. Because do you feel that the dishonesty was brought about by poor management over a 15-year period? Because that is my interpretation of your statement here, but I'll be advised. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
No, the shortcomings in the operation of the premises in relation to the licence cannot be used as an excuse for what has happened. But it is my experience that if something like this has happened, there will also be problems in the running of the premises, and that could have bearings on how the premises is run and any problems that arise such as this. But it is certainly not an excuse or to be for what has happened. And my client is quite clear on that, and it's been made clear to him that there's no excuse for what happened.
Okay, thank you. And stemming from that, another statement is the lack of training in respect of dealing with confrontation and underage sales could also give rise to breaches in the law due to intimidation and ignorance of the law. I'm finding a disconnect here. So my question is, are you asking the subcommittee to believe that Mr. Zamako, who holds full responsibility for the premises, was intimidated to accept and sell the illegal tobacco? Because we heard earlier that in fact he took this as to make up for a shortfall in debt that was owed him. And if you're not asking us to believe that he was intimidated to accept and sell the illegal tobacco, what are you asking us to believe with regard to that statement? Again, I'm a little confused. Thank you.
No, not at all. What happened was not down to intimidation. What I'm saying is that in all premises, it's my experience both as a licensing consultant and as a police licensing officer, that many things happen within the store that are due to intimidation. And that I have experienced when carrying out test purchases at premises, that people will sell rather than refuse because of intimidation. It's my recommendation that any premises such as this have training in how to deal with conflict.
What reference does that have to the matter we have before us of the sale of illegal tobacco?
It has no reference to that, but it would have a reference should the committee decide to be lenient and allow them to continue. Then this would have a great bearing on how the premises is run in the future. So a lot of the things that I've recommended in my report would come into play should the committee decide to allow Mr. Zamako to continue.
I understand, and that's timely because the next one is the conditions that are offered. You've stated a pretty long list of conditions, and regarding these offered conditions, are these offered, I need to ask this, are these offered if this committee is only so disposed not to revocate the licence, or do they stand as offered subject to any that may not be relevant if the subcommittee is not so minded to revocate the licence?
Yes, I would recommend clients unofficially to implement these recommendations or conditions, and there are a list of conditions that I would recommend that the subcommittee do ask for should you allow the premises to continue. And
your client would be happy either way then?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that's very useful, thank you. I'm sorry I have a lot of questions, but it is a very serious matter, so I feel we need to drill down quite deeply, but I'm rather hogging the floor. Members, am I covering things? Councillor Anderson, do you want to raise something? Or I'll leave you a moment? Yeah, I'll leave you a moment to put it in place. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. I'll continue. You state it's also of my opinion and experience that the revocation of the premises licence could prove counterproductive, as the high demand for licensed convenience stores would attract another operator to open in close proximity, and that there's no guarantee that this would be a responsible retailer, and this could bring further problems to this retail and residential area. Mr. Ramsey, I found that rather an odd statement, because you will be absolutely aware that this subcommittee has to look at any matter before it as a standalone matter, and we certainly can't consider what might happen in the future. So can you explain, please, why you draw our attention to this comment? What point were you trying to make? Because I wouldn't want to miss one. Thank you.
Yes, again, it's my police licensing officer that quite often when a premises lost its licence or it was transferred, that we had to start again really with a lot of premises. They weren't up to scratch in relation to the 4 licensing objectives. So what I'm saying is that this has been a wake-up call from my client, not just because of the mistakes that he made in relation to the illegal tobacco and cigarettes, but also in relation to how his premises was being run. With the work I've done with Mr. Zamako and his staff, the premises now will be run to a really competent standard. And that's the point I'm making, is that if the licence is revoked, the premises will be sold, and it may be that the person who takes it on won't be running it to as high a standard. So it's just highlighting that to you. I totally appreciate that this premises has to be taken, or this licence holder has to be taken solely on what has happened. But it was just my experience as to what could happen.
Thank you, that's helpful. You're also going to say that your experience, these standards are not often met, the standards of which you have obviously done your inspection to try and put right. And you say it's usually a lack of experience or understanding as to the requirements of the police and other interested parties. Your client must be aware, though, surely. We'd like confirmation that your client is aware that selling illegal alcohol, tobacco under the counter is certainly not something which is not allowed. Could we have confirmation there, please? And also that's reference to that statement.
Yes, he of that. I've left him in no doubt, and I think it's actually in my report, and I actually highlight this to him, that what is required in relation to the sale of alcohol and the sale of tobacco, and he is in no doubt as to what he done was something that shouldn't have happened, and he'll live to regret that.
Okay, thank you. And we're nearly there. A couple more questions. You say in surveying the premises, I've endeavoured to identify, you call them failings and shortcomings in the operation and recommended methods, training equipment, and will ensure standards required under the Licensing Act 2003. Now, given that your client has actually had his licence since 2007, so that is indeed, how many years is that? 15 years, yes? Would you say, with all your experience, that this premise is well managed?
It is now. I can't say that, having done my survey, that it was managed as well as it should have been. In a lot of ways it was, but it was all word of mouth. There was, and really looking at it, premises such as his will have had test purchases over the years. And he hasn't been into trouble for selling to underage. There doesn't seem to be any antisocial behaviour that's been identified to him, and also, but there are the shortcomings with in relation to documentation and training, which is fundamental in today's. So really, I have to say that it hasn't been managed as well as it should have been over the past few years.
Okay, that's very, very helpful. Now we move to your wife. Could you tell us a little bit about what she does in the shop and the responsibility that she has? And she's the new proposed DPS, as we're here. Was she also allowed to be involved in the under-counter goods to be sold? So we don't know who actually did sell the goods or who was actually passed them over to the customer. But could you tell us a little bit more about that, please, about Mr. Zamako's wife? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Zamaco has worked for many years within the shop, but only had verbal training with no documented proof of training. She has now sat the level 2 APLH and passed that exam. And she will be getting a personal licence in the near future. Mr. Zamaco has totally said that he was responsible for what happened. Him alone was responsible for what happened in relation to the tobacco.
Okay, that's useful. Thank you. And a question to you, Mr. Zamaco, if I may. During the visit on the 12th of July this year with HMRC, the operator and licensing holder, as the operator and license holder of the convenience store, you revealed that you purchased the goods from several individual countries from Eastern Europe. You actually advised HMRC about that. Can you advise us how many times that had occurred in the past, and tell us a little bit more about that statement, please? Thank you.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can, just about, but you'll need to speak up, Mr. Zamaco, please. No, we can't hear you now. You're on mute.
Sorry. Hello.
Yeah, if you lean right in, because it is only you, Mr. Zamaco, unfortunately,
Do you hear me now?
your device is not working well.
Oh, I'm sorry. What about now? Is it work now? Do you hear me?
Yes, we'll listen carefully.
Yeah. Well, actually, I never had before. That's the first time.
Okay, well, I'll refer that back then to Mrs. Busfield with regard to that in a minute. Thank you very much for your answer. If I may come to you, Mrs. Busfield, during the visit on the 12th of July this year, the operator and licensing holder of Bargain Convenience Store revealed that they had purchased the goods from several individuals from Eastern Europe. Mr. Samarco doesn't recall that. Can you advise us or elucidate on that, please?
Actually, yes, Chair, that was a question I was going to put to Mr. Ramsey, actually, because at the time of our visit, Mr. Stamako advised that he couldn't identify the person selling the tobacco or providing him with this tobacco because he purchased it from several individuals from Eastern Europe, and therefore he was unable to identify anyone specific. So to hear that he was receiving this tobacco to sell as part of a payoff of a debt that he was owed, I would hope that Mr. Zamako will be able to furnish us with the details of this individual for future operations and future work by Dorset Police in order to drive down this trade in illicit tobacco throughout our towns and cities in Dorset.
Thank you, Mrs. Buswell. Yes, that disconnect with regard to information has been noted by the subcommittee because there clearly one didn't agree with the other. That's extremely useful. Thank you very much. Councillor Williams, you wanted to raise a question, and then you, Councillor Anderson. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you. Excuse my voice. Has the revenue been paid now?
I'll iterate that. Councillor Williams is interested to know if the revenue's been paid now, if that's been reparated. Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, maybe Mr. Zamarco can answer.
Oh, indeed. Mr. Zamarco, a question from Councillor Williams, unfortunately he's lost his voice this morning a little, is have you paid the duty now on those illegal items, the tobacco? Has that been settled?
Sorry, I didn't get you. I mean,
well, the duty wasn't paid on the tobacco, so duty is due on the tobacco. So have you paid that duty now to HMRC? Has that matter been settled?
no.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Ramsey. You were making comments about the in-house management. Are you happy with the in-house training that's now being put in place?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'm happy with it. There's still some to happen. There's more training to be carried out. But at the moment, as I say, well, Mr. Namako has a licence. Mrs. Namako has passed the APLH level 2 quite comfortably. I have another member of staff who is sitting the exam in the next week. And there has also been in-house training that has been given to the staff, of which all the staff I've recommended that this small test will be taken every 3 months, and it will cover all the main things that they need to know serving in a convenience store.
You can check, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to put back with regard to your line of our line of questioning for you, Mr. Ramsey, to Mrs. Jardim, if I may. Mrs. Jardim, do you have any of those questions that we fired at you? The answers to the questions. Thank you.
Okay, so the conditions of, I'm assuming this is with regards to what conditions they have there and whether there have been breaches.
Indeed.
Yes, so there are conditions with regards to training, ID, and I'm just clicking on them, and refusals register. The conditions currently on that license are, to be fair, fairly poor. They're not as stringent as we tend to have them. They're quite old conditions.
Yeah.
So if I would you mind if I read them out to you, just so that they're clear what they say?
If you can, as I did, as you noted them down, if you can take us through each one so we can ascertain as to whether it's an actual breach or just poor management. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So on condition 2.10, it says that training shall be given to all staff using training methods recognised by police or trading standards. There is nothing further with regards to training. Or
so it doesn't say that so it could be verbal training.
Yes,
So
and it doesn't say whether records have to be kept or anything.
Absolutely.
On 2.11, it says only pass approved IDs shall be accepted, as well as passports or photo driving licence, and a pass scheme signage shall be displayed at the entrance of the premises. That's on 2.13.
Right, so what breaches do you feel there with regard to the conditions on their licence have occurred?
That would be failure to have the signage.
The failure to have signage.
Yeah, so it would be notices. Many times when they have either a policy, whether a challenge 25 or 21 policy, they require to have signage to make members of the public aware of that policy. And although it doesn't tell you what policy they have in place, it does say that the pass scheme signage should be on display. So if they did not have that, then that would have been a breach.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, there with that.
No, just one moment, please, Mr. Ramsey. I'll just allow Mrs. Jardim to finish, and then please do come back.
So the final one was with regards to the refusals register. So again, it's very limited what it states. It states a refusals register or other recognised method shall be used to monitor staff compliance.
But there wasn't a refusals register, was there? There wasn't one in
No.
existence. Okay, so a breach there of its
no.
absence, so a breach with regard to absence of the refusals register.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim. Mr. Ramsey, if you'd like to come back in, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to update you, there was signage in relation to the pass and the under 25.
Sorry, say that again, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, there was displayed the pass under 25 signage at the premises.
Oh, right. And that would have been on the shop front or in appropriate place. Yes, right. Okay, we'll take that out. That's very useful. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing that for us, Mrs. Jardim. It's extremely helpful. So now we have questions. Of members finished with their questions? Yes, thank you very much. But you can come in at any time, obviously, members. Mrs. Busfield, do you have any questions for Mr. Ramsey? Thank you. Or Mr. Zamarko?
Thank you, Chair. No, at this stage I don't.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jardim, do you have any questions for Mr. Ramsey or Mr. Zamarko?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So if there are no further questions, then members, no, I think we've covered things quite comprehensively. So it's now your opportunity, everyone, to sum up, and the party who spoke last to go first. So I will ask you, Mr. Ramsey, if you'd like to put forward your summation. Thank you.
Yes, as already stated, the serious mistakes made by my client have been a major wake-up call for him, highlighting to him the possible consequences of such errors in judgment and poor management. Should the members of the committee be of a mind to allow him to keep his licence, my client, with the improvements that have already been made, will endeavour to maintain a high standard of operation in relation to the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Busfield?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for fear of reiterating everything that has gone before, there's nothing further to say other than the fact that Dorset Police is concerned that an operator with so many years' experience has willingly engaged in organised crime of this nature. And also just to make the subcommittee, or to remind the subcommittee, that illicit tobacco is potentially non-duty paid, but it can also be illicit and improperly manufactured. So anyone selling this tobacco doesn't know what the content of the tobacco is, because it's not labelled and it's not, it hasn't gone through the correct channels. So that is another concern that has to be highlighted: the health of the people who are buying this under the counter or low-priced tobacco and cigarettes.
Thank you, Mrs. Busfield. And Mrs. Jardim, do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything else to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Mr. Zamarko, I will just ask you if you have anything to add.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zamarko. So if everybody's content that everybody's had the opportunity to raise all their points and everybody's been able to ask everybody else the questions they so wish, members, are you content? Okay. I will now conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and our clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that's 5 working days from today, 29th September. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'll ask our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, if she would kindly advise us with regard to the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you, Chair. There will be a right of appeal to whatever decision is made today. That appeal should be made within 21 days and made to Dorset Magistrates Court. Details that will be all in the decision letter.
Thank you very much indeed. So I thank you very much for your attendance today. And I will ask you all now to leave the meeting, and as we're moving to an in-person meeting to deal with the following item of business. Thank you very much to everybody, and a very good morning to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if we could move on to exclude the press and public, and then I will stop the live stream. Thank you very much.
So moving on then to item, I think it's item 6. Protocol for public meetings. Please to note the protocol. And item 7 is exclusion of press, public and press. So in relation to the item of business appearing below, the subcommittee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under section 100A subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 in part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So I will ask, please, if Councillor Wilson, if you will now sign off, and all other members who should not be here to leave the meeting. The live stream will now end. I'll ask